It was a quiet evening in Seattle. The sky had turned gold, and the world outside Bill Gates' study was fading into a peaceful dusk. His desk was cluttered with papers, reports, letters, ideas. The kind of clutter that comes from decades of responsibility. But among those documents lay something different. An old, yellow envelope sealed but never sent. On it, in Bill's handwriting, were the simple words, "To the one who changed me." For years that letter had followed him, from office to office, city to city. Yet he'd never mailed it. Tonight, after another long day, he sat down, picked it up, and stared at it for a long time. Then he smiled, a smile touched by both warmth and regret. "Maybe it's time," he whispered. The story of that letter began many years earlier, long before the world knew him as the richest man alive. It started in a time when success had already surrounded him, but peace had not. Bill was running everything at full speed: projects, deadlines, foundations, technology, always pushing forward. But one day, his assistant found him sitting alone in his office, staring at the skyline. "Are you all right?" she asked. "You look tired." Bill smiled faintly and replied, "Tired is the price of purpose." But inside, he knew it wasn't purpose that exhausted him, it was the chase. Around that time, he received a handwritten letter from a small-town teacher. The letter said, "Dear Mr. Gates, your inventions have changed how my students see the world. But I want to tell you something, they still dream more about who they want to become than what they want to build. Don't forget to tell them that being human is as important as being successful." Bill read that letter 3 times. It was honest, simple, and somehow piercing. It wasn't about money or praise, it was a reminder of something he had forgotten: that technology might change the world, but compassion keeps it alive. He wrote a long reply that night, thanking the teacher, sharing how much her words meant to him, but for some reason, he never sent it. Years went by. The world changed. So did Bill. He built schools, donated billions, and met presidents and kings, but that letter remained tucked in his private drawer. Every now and then, he'd think of it. That unsent message represented something deeper, a version of himself that still wanted to slow down, to connect, to feel. Then one day, during a visit to Africa, he met a group of children studying under a tree. Their teacher was reading aloud from a small, torn book, and when she saw Bill, she smiled and said, "You're the reason we have this learning kit." He smiled politely, but inside, a memory came rushing back: the teacher's letter. That night, in his tent, Bill took out his travel notebook and began writing again. He wrote about gratitude, about how success without meaning felt hollow. He wrote about the loneliness that follows achievement when you forget to share it. He wrote about that one teacher who'd reminded him what mattered. The next morning, he decided to find her. It took months. Her name wasn't famous, her address no longer valid. But eventually, through his foundation, he found her living quietly in a small town in Montana. She was retired, her hair gray, her smile exactly as he'd imagined. When he finally met her, he didn't arrive as Bill Gates, billionaire, but simply as Bill, the man who'd carried a letter for years. He handed her the envelope. "This is for you," he said softly. She looked surprised. "For me?" He nodded. "I wrote this a long time ago, but I never sent it. I think I was afraid that if I did, I'd have to admit you were right." She laughed gently. "About what?" Bill smiled. "That sometimes, even the smartest people forget what life is really about." They sat for hours that day, drinking tea and talking about life, learning, and purpose. She told him she had watched his journey from afar, proud but also worried that he might have lost the joy that once drove him. Bill admitted, "I did, for a while. But I found it again, because of you." Before leaving, the teacher handed him a small, empty notebook. "Keep this," she said. "Every time you feel lost. Write, not code, not business plans, just thoughts. Words are how you find yourself again." Bill nodded, grateful. That notebook later became his private journal, something he wrote in every night before bed, long after the meetings ended and the lights went out. Years later, during a public interview, someone asked Bill what the most valuable letter he ever received was. He smiled and said, "It was one from someone who reminded me that success without soul is just noise." When they asked if he still had it, he replied, "No, I gave it back to where it belonged." That single unsent letter changed how he lived. He began spending more time in silence, reflecting, giving, and connecting with people beyond business. He often told young entrepreneurs, "The world doesn't need more geniuses. It needs more good hearts." In his final note about the story, written years later, Bill reflected, "I learned that life is not measured by how many people remember your name, but by how many hearts remember your kindness." That letter I never sent, it sent me instead. On a journey back to who I was meant to be.